What's up, everyone? Welcome. We are live right now on Cannabis, and if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you so much for joining us. Please like and subscribe. We've got a great show for you today. We're connecting with Chris from Redwood Roots. If you're not familiar, he distributes all kinds of great weed, outdoor, organic, all kinds of from really great farmers, people that are winning Emerald Cup and all kinds of stuff. He's the guy that's getting that weed to the people in California. So we're super stoked to be connecting with him. But before we get too far into it, I need to give some folks some shout outs. So first off, shout out to the Cannabis community. We've got folks that are in the live chat right now, and we stream every time we do these interviews. We stream to our community, and you can join in the chat. And we also do giveaways and all sorts of things. So if you want to be a part of that, look up the Cannabis app in the App Store and use the code GrowersLove for 50% off. We really appreciate your support. I also want to give a shout out to Lost Coast Plant Therapy. Big thanks to Dirk and the team over there. They make a really great product. What it is it's a really great organic spray that you can spray on your plants to take care of bugs, mold, things like that. PM. It's a really great product. Actually, I've been using it because I had some spider mites in my basement on my plants that I'm like getting through the winter, and I went through and I used Lost Coast Plant Therapy, and it really helped out a lot and noticed a noticeable difference. So please support them over at lostcoastplanttherapy.com. Also want to thank SacredThreeMushrooms.com. They make home grow kits where you can grow your own fungi. So if you want to get into that and even more, go over to SacredThreeMushrooms.com, and thanks to them for their support. And then lastly, shout out to TikiSeeds.com, TikiCuts.com, and NeptuneSeedbank. JR gives us the latest from them. What's up from them?
What do you need to do?
Tiki, he's got the Tiki Crazy Love Sale that he's doing. He's got his Gorilla Candy BX, and it's a very sativa leaning, as we would say.
With the block and everything?
And it's BX, and it all starts February 1st, and you get a free pack with every order. So hit up TikiSeeds.com. And then we're featuring the gas fruit, which is Strawberry Banana by Lit OG from Lit Farms, and that's at NeptuneSeedbank.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone who supports us. We couldn't do this without you, and we're super stoked to be connecting with Chris, like I said, from Redwood Roots. He's the guy who distributes folks like Huckleberry Hill Farms, who's JR's wearing their shirt. We were big fans of those guys, and I love Whitethorn Rose. It's one of my favorite strains ever. So and the way I have to get this weed, or the way I get connected with this weed, is through this guy. So I'm super stoked to be connecting with Chris. He's also a really thoughtful guy. If I follow you on LinkedIn, and I'm really interested in your perspective on just the industry. So let's get into it. So JR, throw over your first question.
Well, Chris, first of all, I want to thank you for coming and joining us. We are really excited to have you because you represent a region that's very, very special to all of the people who enjoy the plant. There's so much that has come out of that area in our lifetime. I'm 54, and I'm in Oregon, and you're in, the northern part of California, and we've all been supplying this planet with good green herb for a very, very long time. And so the knowledge and the crazy amount of genetics that you've probably seen and done in your lifetime and in your community is phenomenal. So I just wanted to say that first. And we always ask, our first question is always, how did you fall in love with the plant, and how's it kind of moved you along your journey where you are today?
First of all, thank you fellas too for the invite and the opportunity to just be present and get the message out and spread truly the gospel of the herb from America's Cannabis Heartland, Humboldt County, Southern Humboldt, and the Emerald Triangle as a whole. My relationship with the herb started very young, 12-ish, 11, 12-ish. I started getting highly intrigued. And for me, it actually began kind of secondhand through other families and my best friends growing up, and just smelling them when they came to school, and having it be a familiar smell that came from my dad's bedroom and behind the locked door, and just being like, what is that? And then you figured out what it was. And I actually am first generation cannabis person. My parents indulged and smoked, but they didn't grow. My mom's side of the family, I'm fifth generation Southern Humboldt. My family's been here since the late 1800s. But in regards to cannabis, I'm actually what my grandma called the pioneer of the family. But I became enamored by cannabis at a young age, and instinctively, somehow intuitively believed in the medicine of it. Have always believed in the medicine from that young age. But quite honestly, I was also a young man in America. And at that period of time, cannabis was worth a whole lot of money. And anybody from Humboldt County or the Emerald Triangle that says that it's just all about the plant, quite honestly, I think that's a little bit of a load. We all have had our livelihoods, provided by the plant. And at the end of the day, I don't think very many people would be growing it on the level, or would have ever grown it on the level, just out of the love of the plant. So I like to just be honest and transparent from my perspective and from my history, that of course there was, the first mentor of mine was like the first guy to buy a fancy brand new truck. And as a 12 and 13, all the elders around here were super ninja, low pro, driving beat up old Subarus and Volvos, but probably stacking up some chips, on the behind the scenes, and trying to teach my generation how to be humble and quiet and secretive. And my generation kind of was the generation to really blow the top off of it. But regardless of all that, I've always believed in the medicinal value of cannabis. It's helped me in my personal life, even if it's just in regards to a sleep aid. I currently today use cannabis for sleep in the evenings. I used to smoke all day, every day, like a train. And currently I've actually backed way off, and smoke in the evening time is more for a sleep aid. But that's kind of just how, I was intrigued by genetics at a young age as well. I started farting around with just pollen chucking and stuff as a teenager. Had no idea what I was doing, but created some pretty fabulous beans out of the miracle of the herb itself and what it can do magically. Always believed in medicine. It's really fun to play around with genetics. And then also for me, knowing that, human beings self-medicate with alcohol. They self-medicate with all things. So I believe even when people are using the herb recreationally, it's also medical. It's also
Totally.
medical use, whether it's just to like lighten the load or decompress after work. That's still medicine, and it's still people self-medicating it using for medicine. So
I think it was that Rita Marley said it's for dietary, spiritual, and medical reasons. Those are usually the three reasons that I find people gravitate towards cannabis. Whether we find it through a party or we find it seeking help, a lot of times it speaks to us in a way that kind of works for us. So you kind of grow up in a multi-generational area. So you're very connected to the land that you come from. Can you kind of talk about that connection and how that's kind of shaped things for you?
Boy, that is an amazing question. And really what, for me, my life is all about here in Southern Humboldt is I'm equally in love and enamored by nature as I am by nature's best medicine, cannabis. Growing up surrounded by the Redwood Forest and the Eel River and the Pacific Ocean being right in our backyard, and the Lost Coast is just like this, truly what I believe is God's country. I'm not a religious man, but I believe that there's just so much magic and wisdom. And, if these trees could talk, they've been around here for much longer than white men, and much longer than human beings as a species, I believe. So there's just a lot of magic here in nature, and people have been traveling here for generations to visit this place and also enjoy it generationally. So there's growing up here, my grandparents actually leased Richardson Grove State Park from the state and ran the whole campground and the gift shop and general store and all that. So I grew up very deeply entrenched in the tourism industry, and also just they not only leased Richardson Grove, but they leased Mario's Marina, which is the restaurant, bar, tackle shop, and where the tractors drive fishing boats into the ocean out at Shelter Cove. So I grew up surrounded by the tourist industry, surrounded by, spent time in Richardson Grove as a young man, hanging out with tourist kids, and out at Shelter Cove, hanging out with fishermen's kids. And so nature here is everything, quite honestly. It's like, it never gets old to me. I drive through the Redwood Forest every day, and I'm a tourist when in how fast I drive through the Redwoods, because I don't care how many cars are behind me, but I'll usually go 25 miles an hour in a 35 through Richardson Grove just because I truly love it. And so it's just very special in regards to nature and being in tune with it. And not to go down a rabbit hole, but we lost grasp of the tourism economy here in Humboldt County and the Emerald Triangle as a whole through the green rush. And we didn't really need the tourism economy, and we lost track of it. And we missed a whole generation of tourists. And it's time for us to really utilize nature and the tools, and not an exploitive way, but maybe it is exploitive as a human to ask, tourists to come in here and enjoy nature to drive an economic model. But that's truly what we need to do up here as a community is really focus on the tourism economy again for us to sustain any kind of livelihood. It's much more important and deeper even than just the cannabis market and the regulations and the failed market. It's like we have an opportunity to nurture the old ways of generating revenue here through the tourism economy and the redwood forests and nature. And if you combine that with cannabis tourism, I think we're off to the races. And so it's just a matter of time for us to put those pieces together and really draw people up here to come and enjoy nature. Sorry, I'm super long-winded here today. I apologize.
No, that's great. That's a lot of really good points, because I grew up in Seaside, Oregon, and we were logging and fishing, little tourism. And then logging and fishing went to shit, and now we're all tourism. So it's almost 100% tourism now. And that transition was really hard for our community because, as you know, a lot of times in the summer, sometimes getting from one end of town to the other can be crazy on the 101. And so it's kind of a love-hate for the people who live there, but it's such a vital, important part of your community and what you have to offer the world. And I live in a very beautiful place, but I know that you do as well. And I think one of the great things about planet Earth is there is so many great different things to see, and I think people should be able to free to roam and enjoy what we're on, this rock we're on spinning around the sun.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
Awesome. Let's see. Well, JR, you had a good question here about regenerative natural folks. I wanted you to throw that in for the next one. I thought that would be a good one.
Yeah, well, I heard on one of the Tangled Roots podcasts, you had mentioned that, in your community, you have like the regenerative natural folks, and you have like conservative folks. You've got people who want to preserve the environment and it's pristine, and then you've got folks who want to cut every tree down. So how do you kind of balance that in your community and try to keep, the folks, happy?
I think a lot of that turmoil and tumultuous time, and there was a great divide within our community between the remnants in the last era and generation of the logging the families that their livelihood was logging in the timber industry. And then the back to the landers came in and initiated the cannabis industry. And there was a lot of, divide within that community. And we're talking about the late, the 80s through the early 90s. And what really, there was a summer in 92 called the Redwood Summer. What a crazy period of time with the Redwood Summer, which there was like these massive environmentalist protests at logging companies and chaining each other together around gates to enter old growth forests and able to ensure that those trees were not cut on that day. And then also in 1992, this is a different scenario, but Operation Green Sweep happened in 92 when the federal government sent in National Guard troops, and was truly the biggest military move since the Civil War in regards to the United States government using its military to enforce the law with the American people. The biggest.
You could just say it. They were at war with their own people.
Absolutely.
They weren't enforcing laws. They were committing war against their own people.
Absolutely. And so 92 was a really crazy time up here in the herb game. And then also that divide between the environmentalist families and the back to the landers and the logging families that we all went to school together. We all rode the same school buses. We all played on the same football, soccer, baseball, basketball teams. And there was a lot of bloody fights in the hallways of South Fork High School back in the 80s and 90s that I saw that were like grown men with beards that were in high school that were just beating the shit out of each other because there was this, well, your family is an environmentalist and they're trying to take my family's livelihood away. And so there was that divide. And what happened was corporate came in and took over the biggest local mill, Maxam Timber Company, came in and bought the biggest redwood mill in the world in Scotia and mechanized it. And now there's really I think literally 5 humans that work in the entire mill, even though they're the rate of which they cut trees down and harvest trees and turn it into lumber is at its peak. There's the log deck and where they store the lumber before it's shipped out. They've doubled the size of the log deck in the last 5 years and have just poured gas on cutting trees down recently. But I think in terms of the divide of the people here, that's long gone. There's a little, there was not so much so anymore, but at the beginning of Prop 64 there was another little bit of a divide that I believe is mostly squashed between the traditional market people that stayed traditional and didn't drink the Kool-Aid of Prop 64, or even if they didn't drink the Kool-Aid, they were blaming, some of the people that went legal on the enforcement on the people that stayed traditional. And so there was a little period of time there that got a little weird within the community, within even the traditional market cannabis community of pointing fingers at each other, oh, it's you. And so, but at the end of the day, a lot of those, to go backwards in time, a lot of those timber company, families started growing weed and turned into weed growers. You know what I mean? As the timber industry collapsed, a lot of those families turned into cannabis people. And then all of a sudden we were all just one big happy family, and the fights at school diminished and the parties got bigger because we all partied together instead of having the redneck parties and the hippie parties all turned into one big party.
Interesting.
And so, anyways, that era was pretty gnarly in this community. I'm not shitting you. There was fist fights all day, every day, and it was no shit. I mean, it was violent at school. Junior high, there was gnarly fights, and so, but
well,
we've weathered that.
It's like the healing of the nations, man.
Yeah, that's right. There's a good example of it actually bringing people together.
For sure. Well, let's get into Redwood Roots. Super excited to talk to you about this. To just name a couple of the farms. So, on this show, we've talked about Huckleberry Hill Farms. We've had a couple interviews with them. Ridgeline Farms is distributed by you. You've got all kinds of great farms that you're connected with and friends with. So, let's get into how kind of give us the background on Redwood Roots. How did it start? How many farms did you start with? And then how many kind of did you grow to today?
Yeah, interestingly enough, my journey in regulated cannabis, I'll say, started in 2015, way late in the game of the 215 era. I honestly considered myself an outlaw for life. I wanted nothing to do with any kind of regulated cannabis. And I was all for my whole life and still am in for legalizing weed, not regulating weed. I even to my own business's demise, my dream would be for weed to just be free. Yeah, I don't mean free money. Of course, I want everybody to be able to grow it everywhere. Everybody should be, it's a plant like a fucking tomato, like basil, like anything. Like anybody should be able to grow it anywhere for their own use if they want. And it should also be able to be for sale if people want to sell it at a local's farmer's market or a fucking goddamn, flea market or what the fuck ever. You know what I mean? And you should have to pay taxes on that income if you're selling it and making money, just like any other small business. But should it be taxed in the way that it is and overtaxed? No, anyway, no, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But so sure. 2015, I heard, I've been here. I heard whispers of the Emerald Cup since it started, even, in the mid 90s or, late, I guess the early 2000s. But it just really wasn't my jam, even though I believed in the medicine of it. I just didn't want, even 215, I wasn't really stoked on. That's how deep of the old school traditional outlaw way I was. But I went to the Emerald Cup, one of my best friends and I were talking about, what we were hearing about the Emerald Cup, what we're hearing and seeing happening, with the drafting and the movement towards Prop 64 and seeing the momentum behind Prop 64 grow and seeing the inevitability of it probably passing before it passed, and went to the Emerald Cup in 2015 just to see what was going on out there in the big bad world. Had never been to a dispensary, had never been to a weed event, had never been in any, none of that. Gave a bunch of weed away to people all the time, but just wasn't into that game, wasn't into being public, was still very private, lied to people about who I was and what I did for a living, like we were trained and taught to do as young men and young women up here. I had fake names. I wasn't from Garberville. When I traveled, I used literally, and it was fucked up. It was exciting, but to start a relationship with a lie about who you are, it's like you knew that relationship and that new introduction was never going to go anywhere because you started the relationship by introducing yourself as a lie. And that's a tough pill to swallow as a young human being, like being unauthentic and not being able to be proud of who we were, And so we went to the Emerald Cup in 2015, which was at borderline the peak. There was 30,000 people there. Whereas all these, 215 was such a gray area that we all loved, that it was still just fucking the wild, wild west. And we went planning on Saturday, planning on staying the night and coming back Sunday to really dig into it. And we walked onto the property up there at the Sonoma County Fairgrounds and our mouths dropped. And we walked around and literally barely talked to each other and kind of like had this moment where we both almost came to just like overwhelmed and just like, oh my God, this is disgusting. It's going commercial. It was just plastic big. It was mostly concentrate brands back then. And there was a lot of big plastic, giant money marketing budgets and plastic booths. And it was just full steam ahead because it was 215. And there was tons of gray area. So you could bring fucking packs and boxes and liters and whatever and sell it out the back door of your booth. And it was just fucking bonkers. it's truly like 2015 Emerald Cup was insane. 2016 was also equally insane. And then it started tapering off a little bit because of the regulations. But so we went to Emerald Cup. Halfway through the day, we're like, let's get the fuck out of here. And on the way home, we're like, this is happening whether we want it to or not. So do we want to continue our life's journey in cannabis, or is it time, or are we just going to throw in the towel and figure out something else to do? And we literally called our attorney on the way home on a Saturday and scheduled a meeting on Monday, and had our our MBC, Mutual Benefit Corporation, which was one of the structurings of entities under the state for 215 collectives. And we chose an MBC designation, Mutual Benefit Corporation, and went to his office on the following Tuesday and formed Redwood Roots as an MBC 215 collective. At that point in time, the Prop 64 regs, the draft that was current at that point in time that hadn't been passed, but the language within it was very, very limiting in the license types. So the first draft, if you had a distribution license, that's all you could do. You couldn't have cultivation. You couldn't have manufacturing. Right. You couldn't have anything.
No vertical integration at all.
And you could only have 4 licenses total, regardless, as a person. And at that, and today, still a corporation, it qualifies as a person. So your business or you as a person could only have your name on 4 licenses, period. Didn't matter how many. You could have 4 cultivation licenses. You could have 4 manufacturing licenses. You could have 4 nursery licenses. You could have 1 of each, 2 of one, whatever you wanted. But and at that period of time, I was a clone guy. I was in my piece of property here in Bembo was the perfect destination location to have a dispensary. So my first 2 applications in Humboldt County were actually to open a nursery, because I supplied a lot of the genetics and clones in Southern Humboldt and Northern Mendocino through the 90s and the early 2000s on the traditional market, and literally, had tens of thousands of babies at all times. And that was really who I was and what I did and how I was known and what I was known for. And so I applied for a nursery license first and a dispensary license, and was going to have a cute little nursery here to supply all the farms with genetics, and a little storefront here to provide what I thought was Humboldt County and Emerald Triangle herb to tourists. And it was going to be more of a tourist thing. And it still is. However, there was a dispensary that opened in Redwood, which generated most of its business from locals. So lo and behold, you can sell ice to Eskimos here in Humboldt. Humboldt County residents actually buy weed from Humboldt County farms at local dispensaries. It's real. But so we formed Redwood Roots 2015. Sorry, I'm super long-winded here. And really started it when we formed the company. It really wasn't, we didn't have a vision of forming a collective to support and work with a lot of farms in the area. It was just literally kind of throwing paint on the wall. And at that point in time, there was also some language that was in the draft of 64 that said that if you had a collective prior to January 1st, 2016, you would get priority licensing under Prop 64, even though that didn't ever happen. But that was the reason we went and jumped on forming a collective. And it was literally Christmas Eve of 2015 that we signed our documents and became an NBC. So we were 5 days before the cutoff to get priority. And that was the only point of doing it that day, was to get priority licensing, which proved to not even really be necessary or mean anything. And then as the months progressed, we really started discovering that there was a lot of people here in Southern Humboldt in particular that were really on the fence, like we were, about starting a collective or being a part of collective or heading this legalized direction. And so what we thought we could do is and what qualified farmers as being in good standing
before January 1st of 2016 as becoming a member cultivator of a collective. And so in that 5-day window, we signed up 60 member cultivators of people that were on the fence of getting priority licensure and all that shit. And so it kind of, then we realized not only was it an avenue for them to get priority licensure and be in good standing with the state under Prop 215, but allowed them to then use our patient base for plant counts on their 215 farms, which then protected them from the law by just signing up as a member cultivator of Redwood Roots. And then we started, that snowballed into seeing other ways we could support the local farm community by them not having to go pay for attorneys. Like, why they're going to go hear the same thing we heard from our attorneys?
That's really big. That's huge.
We started documenting our minutes and our notes from our attorney meetings and sharing our resources with farmers so that they didn't have to go replicate the model and do it all on their own. And it enabled people to be protected under the 215 law. It enabled them to get priority licensure for Prop 64 when it came. And it really started the momentum behind Redwood Roots being known in the community as a support group and a foundation for them to stand on safely while we kind of just figured the rest out. So it really wasn't formed with an intention of where it is today. It kind of just evolved into this thing that it is today through serving, really seeing holes in the service to the community, seeing ways that we could provide a pathway forward, kind of like, hey, look at me, I'll be the test dummy.
Right.
I did it. I did it. I didn't get busted. I signed my name on the dotted line. The cops know everything about me. They're not coming. You guys, if you guys want to come this way, you can, and you can just jump right onto this train and be protected right here, right now. And then let's sit down at round tables and start discussing how we can move this forward as a group. And the dream was always to be a farmer-owned, co-op-ish and then that all evolved actually into, then the license types opened up to where you could have distribution, you could have retail, you could have nursery, you could have cultivation, you could have all of it. And at that point in time, even though I didn't even sell my own bulk flower back in the day, I gave it to my friends. I was not a salesy guy. I hated selling my own bulk flower. And through this process, taking on 60 member cultivators and farms and going down to LA and starting to dabble around with my own bulk flower and my own jars, my own flower and my own Redwood Roots jars, and kind of dabbling around, all of a sudden I found myself in a position of like, well, I have relationships to move their bulk flower through the 215 channels. And farmers started saying, well, I have flower to sell. Can you sell it? And so I started moving bulk flower through the collective channels, licensed, legal, patient bases, and following all the 215 rules, totally legally, compliantly. And then Prop 64 happened. And we, instead of being member cultivators, there was no protection under the 215 law anymore. But I found myself in a position of having sales channels for bulk flower, having relationships with retailers, with my own house brand, Redwood Roots' house brand, and kind of just finding myself in a position of responsibility and service to the community that just organically happened. And so the member cultivators went away, and 2018 happened. 2019, we started revving up pretty fast without even really a plan to scale or a strategy in place to scale. And, the Flocanas, the Sonoma Pacific, the Pac X's, the Altamines, the big, well-funded distros that were really my competitors, all vanished into thin air kind of overnight.
Yeah.
And what happened was the local community was heard that I was doing good and that I was honest and that I was local and that I was selling people's weed and getting them paid, and the flow was good. And so what happened was other people's demise ended up being my success. and I didn't have to cold call. I didn't have to reach out to anybody. I hired a couple ladies to run farm relations, and they just immediately started getting a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen calls a day from farmers who were looking for licensed distribution services. And we ended up in 2020, year 2, moving over $50 million worth of bulk flower for local farmers with 5 people on my team.
Wow.
And I'm very humbly stating that, not bragging, but and ended up probably servicing at least 200 farms organically, just in 2020. And then the market collapse happened in 2021. And I had scaled the company in a year from 5 employees to 48. We went from 1 vehicle, my own personal Toyota Tundra, to 8, buying 8 vans outright, and never had infrastructure or processes or systems in place to scale on that level that quick, and got my ass handed to me and learned all the lessons the hard way repeatedly. And I'm really, 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 really lucky, beyond lucky. It's miraculous for Redwood Roots to still be here. And the only reason we're here is because the community is behind us. And my team is fucking our animals. And they believe in what they do. They know that they don't work for Redwood Roots. My team works for this community. They work for small farms. I sign their paychecks, but Redwood Roots is just a service arm serving this community. It's an entity. It pays taxes. It makes payroll. It does all those things and stuff. But at the end of the day, my team knows who they work for, and they don't work for me. They work for this place, and they work for the plan. That's real shit. And they believe that. And so I have this team that believes in what they do. I have a community that, through all my pitfalls and mistakes and downfalls, it's been a rough fucking road, and Redwood Roots and myself are so far from perfect. We have made all the mistakes. But I live here. I stay here. I go to the local gas stations, grocery stores, and I'm not going anywhere. And so at the end of the day, I have to save face, and I look people in the eye and I tell them I'm sorry when I make a mistake. And sometimes that sorry is a word, and it goes on deaf ears. But the majority of times people see my company and me here working our asses off. I don't get paid. I literally don't get paid. I haven't been paid to do the work. I'm not complaining, but in 3.5 years, I haven't been paid a dime for the work that I do. And so people know that, and I think continue to believe in us. And so the only reason we're here is because farmers believe in us, and the community, believes in what we do. And
the message that we're always pushing is we don't have to do business the way corporate America does business. And if you serve your community, if you truly serve your community, be that whatever your community is to you, your community will provide for you. And so I think me and Sam have kind of been pushing that message for folks. It's just like, serve your community, serve your plant, and we'll get through the shit storms together, and we'll lift each other up at the end of the day when all of this fucking craziness is behind us.
Well, no, honestly, that's another reason why I personally serve as I do, is because I love to serve, and my people doing this I don't want this. It's not about me, but my point here is that the elders in this community, along with both sets of my grandparents and my parents, built this place, and I saw the elders literally build barns together, and it wasn't about you paying me to do something. Right. It was about me coming over to your house and helping you dig a hole, and then you come over to my house and help me dig a hole. Mm-hmm. And we do this thing together. And I saw from a very young age, I saw elders coming together to be selfless and to do things that were bigger than them as individuals. And I literally saw this when I was like 3 and 4 years old, and just being like, wow, this is fucking cool. And so I was inspired and taught and am still today working really hard to keep this community in a state that remembers who we are and where we came from, and remember the values of the elders that made this place special and built the community center and built Camelot Radio. And one of the reasons we have the most robust network of volunteer firefighting, volunteer fire departments, is because there's people that these guys don't get paid. They're out there fucking saving each other's houses and fucking spending weekends doing fire training to help each other. They don't get paid. They're doing this shit because they want to be of service to their neighbors.
About small communities. A lot of the small communities don't have the infrastructure or the services larger communities do, so the people of the community do it themselves. You have volunteer fighters. You know what I mean? There's almost at every level. You know what I mean?
That's right. So it's been a beautiful place to learn how to do that and to be taught by example. You know,
so Chris, I had a question for you that I wanted to that I've been excited to ask you. I've been thinking about because I really love the weed that you connect the people with. Like I said, White Thorn Rose is one of my favorite strains, and I've always find a lot of the other growers that you guys distribute always have something interesting, and so I seek it out. But one thing I've noticed that I wanted to ask you about, could you speak to the challenge of getting your weed into dispensaries and kind of the challenge that or friction that is there? Because so I live in Vallejo, and I've heard that Vallejo is not really interested in organic weed basically, and that's why I can't find these sorts of things in my town, and I have to drive down to the East Bay or up to Fairfield or whatever. So I was just kind of curious if you could speak to that, what that is like, and what kind of conversations, or like what do you have to overcome to get your weed to the people?
Holy shit. Are there hurdle after hurdle after hurdle after hurdle of mostly what I would say is idiocracy and ill-informed, miseducated bullshit, quite honestly. But number one is we're up against the regulations. I had one of my teammates while my main ops guy was out of town for a couple of weeks. And he's just an animal and just somehow does all these things just with like his eyes closed. And it's taken them 5 years to get to this point. But it's like, it's any normal human being couldn't do it. But anyways, I was like, so count the steps that it takes you to pull and pack one retail order with 10 SKUs on it. And it took him 85 steps.
Jesus.
85 steps with an SOP to pull and pack one 10 SKU order that was like $2,500 fucking dollars. And that's just operationally. That's not the sales people that had to schedule a meeting getting a purchasing manager's contact is miraculous. The highest turnover rate in the industry, in my opinion, and if it's not it's bud tenders, but it is a purchasing manager.
Why is that?
You get the purchasing manager's contact is really fucking hard. And that's the person who decides what brands that retailer is going to purchase. Yeah. And who's driving their choices is different depending on the account. Sometimes
can be predetermined, right?
Most of the times it is.
Right. Yeah.
And therefore, that's why a lot of the times you can't even get the purchasing manager's contact because they just don't want to. You're just bothering them.
Yes.
They're lazy. They have steezy cookies. I'm not talking shit about those brands or those companies, but they have those brands and those companies silver spoon feeding them with 40% discounts all day, promos, showering incentives on their bud tenders. It's a perpetual promo day, all day, every day. It's free quarter pounds to the bud tenders in the back so that they can smoke. And it's like, we don't have a budget to compete with that shit. So step one, purchasing manager contact, miraculous. Step two, getting the meeting with the purchasing manager is miraculous. Step three, getting the order, miraculous. all those things have to happen before we even can get to the point where we're putting an order into our inventory control system, which then our ops then gets notified that there's an order in. They go and pull the order out of inventory, create the order. They pack the order. Then they create a manifest in metric to ship the order. Then the order is logisticized with our transportation logistics woman, who then in alignment with the sales rep informs the retailer when the order is going to be dropped. Then our transportation department, this costs us $150 an hour to have a van on the road. That's how much it costs us to have a vehicle on the road for 1 hour, with gas, maintenance, wear and tear, insurance, payroll, labor, all of it.
Right.
Then we ship the order to a retailer, which sometimes a retailer, even though you scheduled your drop time at 1 and you have 4 other drops to make at specific times after that, wants to push you out 2 hours because they forgot about this or that or what the fuck ever. And now you're running 2 hours late to your next drop, and you have to go ahead and call the logistics person to say, hey, I'm running 2 hours late. And then that logistics person has to call the other 4 dispensaries and tell them we're going to be late. And then the second person's late. You got to call the second 3 that you're going to be late again. And then you look like the shit show. They don't trust you or believe you that it's the other retailer's issue. So they start talking shit about you behind back, telling other retailers that you deliver late. So then you drop the order, and it's supposed to be COD, but lo and behold, they don't have the cash that day to pay you. So then you still drop the order and trust them that you're going to get paid on the next drop?
Yeah. See, no, I don't know how to do it. I couldn't do business that way, man. I could not.
Or it's terms.
And
you agree to the terms, and you go back on the 14-day terms, and they asked for 30.
No. Terms is the way
it's just the way it is.
I don't.
Though.
Yeah, it's so lame because I don't have the money to pay you, and if I don't feel like paying you, I might not pay you. How about those terms? And that's usually like the kind of bullshit you're in,
And there's no meat on the bone with any of these agreements. You can call collections agencies, you can sue, you can do whatever the fuck you want, and it doesn't fucking matter. You're not going to get your money.
There's no accountability. Yeah. And
there's no way to hold the line of accountability, even though there isn't, but there's no way to enforce accountability even.
Yeah.
So, you get the order out, you're waiting for your terms, or you got COD. Then that money comes back to accounting. You run the money, you divvy it out to all the farm brands. So you're running you're running on consignment. We have a monthly payout cycle to the farms that we send them inventory and sales reports based on the previous month's sales. They get paid on the 15th, and the cycle continues. So, and that's, and I'm not covering your questions there, Sam. If you could tap in one more time and remind me of a couple other like A, B, and C parts of this question, or if you're just done with that answer, I'm cool too. But I think there was a couple things I missed.
I think, I think I was going to say, you've taken us on a journey on a lot of these questions, but we appreciate it because I think that people that watch these sorts of shows or listen to these sorts of podcasts or whatever, they're interested in how this shit actually works. So I appreciate you going through the details and not like skimming through some of this stuff, because it is genuinely interesting to just hear like from someone who's actually doing it, how this stuff works. So I appreciate it, man. I think the only question that I would add, or like additional detail I would ask you about, is are you finding the friction about the organic or outdoor or whatever it is? It's like people are just not into that story. They're just, because one of the things anecdotes I'll share with you is one of the East Bay dispensaries that is really great at selling your weed and some of these brands that I really love. One of the bud tenders there was like, oh no, we don't have White Thorn Rose, but we do have this indoor weed from Oakland. And I was like, why would why that? And he's like, but because it's indoor, it's great. And I was like, but that's the complete opposite of what I like asked for, right?
Yeah,
I was
I'm
asking
seeking,
for,
right?
yeah, I was asking for like Northern California organic outdoor, and he was like, yeah, we don't have that, but we do have this indoor. And I was like, what? And so even at the dispensaries that do have a great rep for, you know, connecting with the messes or whatever, even internally they might have a random bud tender that might not be with it. So could you speak to that a little bit? I'd just be curious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really believe the bud tenders are driving the industry. They're creating the industry. They're the people that are messaging whatever they message or whatever they get paid to message. Honestly, at the end of the day, I think very few bud tenders are speaking authentically, unfortunately. I believe they're being incentivized and they're taking the easiest pathway to a sale instead of trying their hardest to dig in and learn themselves and educate themselves so that they could speak truth to the consumer. And I believe it's a very lazy, and sorry, bud tenders, I love y'all. And I'm not calling y'all lazy. So don't get this wrong. We need you. We appreciate you. However, I do believe there is an error of what I believe is laziness, not only from the bud tender community, but from purchasing managers and shop owners, just choosing the easiest pathway forward, which is gentrifying the market. It's not serving their customers well. And their customers to me are not only the end consumer, but the brands that they carry. And so their two customers are getting the short end of the stick based on them just taking the easy way out. And so there is certain regions, certain demographics. There are certain little pockets within even Southern California, which is all about the indoor bling. There are little pockets of, you know, the Cornerstones, the LAPCGs. There are some Sesame Creeks. There are some accounts that are known to support our people, meaning the customers that want our product. But there is also palpable momentum in the retail segment of the market that's real, and it's data driven, and it's trending. So some of it's not authentic in the shops pivoting towards wanting to start carrying this thing, and it is the data that's telling them that, which is great that the data is telling them that. But I
think something Sam was kind of pushing towards is just kind of the message of sun grown and terroir and what that brings to the table, as opposed to something that might be in a 6-inch cube.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes time. You know, there was a generation of customers in the 215 era, in particular in LA, the biggest marketplace in the world, that quite honestly, we weren't feeding them. You know, most of our product from the Emerald Triangle was going east across the country. Yeah. And so a lot of our product didn't really make it to the LA consumer base. And so we got lost. And it's crazy, but a lot of the younger generation of consumers don't even know where Humboldt County is or what it is. And this is a crazy thing that I heard talking to some younger folks at a retail shop in LA about why did they not want to grow sun-grown? And they said, why would I smoke something grown in this dirty air when I can smoke something that's grown inside, right, and the air is being filtered? Is that not fucking crazy? So they're thinking our sun-grown weed from the Emerald Triangle is being grown in this like hazy, smoggy, polluted air. Right. But it's like, this is literally the way one person that I talked to was thinking. So it led me to believe that if one person's thinking that, there's probably more people that actually think that way down in LA. But so we're our you know, as a community of people, we started this grassroots guerrilla style marketing, and we have people like Sun and Earth that are out there championing us and speaking the truth, but with no budget behind who we are and what we provide. And we're up against like these massive marketing budgets that are driven by people that have 20 years experience and are marketing scientists.
Yeah, right. I know.
Driving the marketplace. I know. Our education and our grassroots messaging is finally now, though, it is taking hold. It is
people are hearing it, and there is momentum and enough people out there in the marketplace that are starting to be curious and want small batch and want sun grown, and that the people that have already tried it and made that move are like, whoa, yeah. And now there are spokespeople that are speaking on our behalf for free. You know what I mean? So it's just this grassroots, zero marketing budget effort that is taking time, and it's finally cycling around today after 3, 4, 5 years of Prop 64 to now finally taking effect. And I think not only the authenticity behind what we're saying, but people wisening up to the bullshit of those $1 million marketing budgets and knowing and figuring out that it's bullshit is also starting to happen.
Yeah. I know. I like that the common theme I've been hearing the last month or so is like, oh yeah, THC, what's that number? Ha ha ha. No one knows. Everyone knows that that's bullshit. Well, we've all known it a long time that it's been a THC driven, kind of scam when, it's just a way to avert putting out, maybe owning a fresh product. But anyway, so that whole cycle of marketing you could see was just, it was sleazy and slimy from the gate. And, and then you got these labs that are, 45, 50%, it's like, come on, where are we going to go with this? And I think also to speak to that kind of your region and your area, some of the legends, I think, like Frenchy Cannoli, that's how I learned about your whole environment and terroir and what all that means and what sun grown really means. And so another thing I wanted to ask about is I always thought that if you guys could figure out drying and curing at the same level that some of these high-end indoor guys do their drying and curing, then it would be game over. And then now you've got your rosin market and your desire for those gland heads that are going to drive your market as well. How are you guys kind of pivoting towards that?
There's more and more farmers that are dabbling in and dedicating significant portions of their crop to solventless in particular. There's still some BHO going on out there, and some fresh frozen, and some companies that are pulling product out of the triangle for that type of product. But there's definitely a massive uptick in solventless, and then at the same time, what's going on in this market is crazy. Sorry, I keep going down these rabbit holes sideways, but what's happening with that, I believe, is that even a lot of the big farms are just dedicating their entire crops to live rosin, seeing the market going towards rosin, and then like all these segments of the market is soon, like by the time you're heading that way, they're already saturated.
Yeah. It's like stem seeds.
So you kind of gotta, I feel like my strategy is to just stay the course and stay in my lane and let these cycles, instead of pivoting and keeping changing my sandcastle business plan to follow the trends. It's like, I'm just going to stay in my trend and stay in my lane and know that what we do and what we provide is sought after, and that it's going to grow in demand over time by us just staying who we are and what we do, instead of chasing genetics and chasing trends. But also there are a lot of farmers.
At the end of the day, you're the guy who sets up the deal with the farm, and so you're responsible for that quality from that point, the moment you accept it, to the moment it gets to the shelf. And it's a very perishable product. So is that flower market going to diminish and that hash market going to bloom just for the longevity of the product?
Oh, that's an interesting perspective. And I mean, I think it's one of the reasons why the indoor thing is also taking a hold. I love 1-year-old sun-grown weed, even if it's kind of started not oxidizing, but if it's been stored in cold, dry, dark climate, even if it's starting to it's like it's yellowed a little bit. It's not like that super vibrant lime green and magenta purple, and it's just got a little bit of discoloring in there. Like, that's the best fucking smoke on the fucking planet. However, and every connoisseur and every weed smoker will agree to that if they know anything about anything. But there's this consumer base that's been somehow trained and taught to think that, once pot is 60 days old, it's old.
Right. Totally.
And you know what I mean? And so that's one of the reasons that the indoor generation is continuing to thrive. And now to go back time here, and please put a pin in this and remind me where the fuck I'm at. But I wanted to go back in terms of the sun-grown indoor thing and that trend and how that really started in the biggest marketplace in the world, which is the Los Angeles, Southern California market. Is I believe the majority of the 1,600 215 shop owners, when there was 1,600 dispensaries in LA County alone, a lot of those people had their own indoors. So they were pushing indoor. That's when that whole miseducation of high THC and bling started, is all the people really driving the market all were indoor farmers. And they were telling all their consumers that indoor is better and the high THC is better. And so there was that 10-year period of time of 215 where they all drank that Kool-Aid. And so pivoting, re-educating or getting people to change their mind on that is where we're at on some level. But, and then, so sorry, dude, like, remind me where the fuck we were just at.
Well, we were just kind of talking about, the perishableness of flour and sun-grown flour,
Well, I mean, what we try not to, in terms of Redwood Roots as a function, and I'm not sure exactly if that's what you're talking about, but we try not to take product in unless we know it's sellable really quick. There are times where we'll take product and the market is X, and the market will literally shift in a week. And by the time I get that product to LA, the price is too lower than where the farmer wants it. And the farmer I'll be like, hey, do you want this product back? And they'll be like, no, just hold on to it for me until the market picks back up in the spring. And I mean, even in that respect, I don't really like to hold product because I know it's going to degrade. And even if it's my best friend, that farmer's going to come back in 4 or 5 months. And no matter where you stored that product, it's going to have degraded. But then all of a sudden I let their pot sit for so long it degraded, and it's my fault. Yeah. So I learned that lesson the hard way. Even I know better, and I know my integrity is intact, and I did not fuck up your weed. I tried to sell it, it didn't sell, and you told me to store it, so I stored it, and it degraded. Yeah, right. What else do you want me to do?
I'm listening to your pain, bro. It's got to be so hard doing what you do.
Honestly, dude, I am not complaining. I chose my seat, dude. So I have to show up and sit the fuck in it. It's not very fun anymore. I'll tell you that. I'm starting to have fun again.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing too.
No, it's funny, bro. I like to be lighthearted. I'm not crying. I'm not doomsday over here. I'm over the doomsday. I'm over complaining about the regulations, honestly. I'm over complaining about corporate this or corporate that. I don't give a fuck anymore. The playing field is the fucking playing. No, but really, dude. Yeah. Like, I'm focused on finding the solutions and the answers. I don't want to dwell on the problems. I don't want to live. I'm turning 50 in a couple months, and I do not want to live the rest of my life complaining and crying. I'm trying to find solutions. I'm trying to move forward, and I wake up fucking gratitude because I live where I live. I'm surrounded by weed. I have a community that believes in me, and fuck it. I'm not homeless. I know what I'm eating tonight. I have a fucking woman that loves me. I have 2 stepkids that fucking supposedly tell me they love me, but I don't know. No, I'm just joking. They do, and I love them back. But that's really where I'm at right now, dude. I don't want to have conversations about how shitty it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's not. I mean, it's shitty, and the market's still not great, but there is a way forward. And in today's market, there is a viable market today in the bulk flower and retail segment of the California market. If you dot your I's, cross your T's, and do the right thing, your COGS, your expenses, you're tracking your fucking cost of goods and your cost of living, you're living humbly, you're not going on 3 vacations, you're not buying a new Beamer. And our number one issue right now, all over the fucking place, guys, sorry. Our number one issue right now, though, and our number one enemy in the Emerald Triangle is not the regulations. It's not corporate America. It's fucking nurseries that are feeding us bunk fucking genetics. And it's farmers that are chasing genetics and chasing designers and chasing trends that are getting fucking bunk ass genetics. They're being told it's lemon cherry gelato or ice cream cake, and it's fucking some offshoot of Jack Herrera that is just not a sellable product in the bulk market. And
Bro, and
people in their
the
60s and
tragedy
70s.
is your region has varieties that have been in that region for generations that are fire. Chasing those trends are not going to do any service to anybody who lives in a coastal region, especially if you have a marine layer that moves in. You're going to be fuckaroni.
Or a river, or the river valleys that are super foggy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or it's like there's a lot of the designers that come out no bigger than my pinky
Bro,
nail.
try growing Girl Scout cookies Thin Mint outside and tell me what you get.
I mean, it's like, so
Tell me what you get.
But the thing about this, though, and it's real, this is real talk, is that the heritage genetics haven't taken a hold in the bulk market. The bulk market and the retail market are completely different markets, and what they demand and what are hot. Blue Dream, Jack Herrera, top sellers. Blueberry Muffin, Sour Diesel, SFVOG, top sellers. Whitethorn Rose, I can't sell that shit in bulk no matter fucking how hard I try, because people don't want it in bulk form. But the consumers in retail want all the classics. They want all the designers. All the designers are going fucking east. They're going to Atlanta. They're going to fucking New York. I don't know where they're going, but they ain't staying in California. The majority of that shit's going somewhere else.
Because it's becoming so regional. There's not just that LA hype train anymore. You know what I mean? There's not a few breeders cranking out the ones. There are the ones all over this nation now that are being bred and that are creating their own scene and their own, it's just now starting, really. We're at the beginning of all of this. So I think those ones, how like OG Kush, I mean, fucking A, for a decade, it just dominated, right? I don't see that happening with any one cultivar.
I agree with that. And even like the Whitethorn Roses and the Lance that we're distributing currently, that are getting all the hype, and Forbes magazine and High Times Strain of the Year and Bert Kirshner's podcasts and High Time, all the accolades and all the Burner Marijuana Mania episode 6 and Ridgeline Farms Lance with fucking 40 million views.
Nice. Do
it. Even those, genetics will only have so much longevity in the marketplace, and the breeders and the Ridgeline Farms and the Huckleberries, believe me, are diligently moving other breeding projects forward to keep ahead of the next thing and the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So just know, the end consumers should know that those farms are continuing to evolve their genetics and are just going to continue to come out with the next Whitethorn Rose and the next Lance that are going to be even better than those. And truly is the work that this community needs to be doing. And what I was getting at in terms of following trends is, we could have been and are now starting to create the trends, but we could have been, if we would have just believed in ourselves and understood our value in the marketplace, we could have just stayed as leaders of the trend in the marketplace. But instead we pivoted to following trends and believing the hype. And now, slowly but steadily, as we gain momentum with heritage genetics and some of these breeding projects, it may be that the bulk market starts pivoting towards these things because they're rare, they're coveted, they're high demand, and everybody and their mother can grow jealousy. Everybody and their mother can grow Oreos. Everybody and their mother can grow Thin Mint's fucking Girl Scout cookie. Everybody and their mother can grow all that shit. And so if you want the same thing that you can get at Glass House and every other big brand that buys from Glass House and I'm not heckling Glass House, I'm just speaking the truth. But if you want the same flower grown from the same farm and in 10 different mainstream brands, fucking go for it. But over time, I have no doubt that more and more consumers are going to get bored with that shit. They're going to get curious and intrigued about what the cool kids in the Emerald Triangle are doing, and why Bert Kirshner's and Snoop Dogg and fucking Wiz Khalifa are like, whoa, Emerald Triangle, like the Lance and, and Whitethorn Rose, and like all of a sudden, and that's what's happening today, is it's becoming cool. Right. And when you start becoming cool, even the people that thought they were cool, then they want to be cool again, and then they jump on the train. And so it's like there's like this thing that's happening that's organic, that all of a sudden, in a humble way am I stating this, but all of a sudden, heritage genetics and the Emerald Triangle are becoming the cool kids in class again. And in particular, their farming practices and their flower.
I think people are starting to get educated about what service your community has provided for our nation and our world for a very long time. Like I said in the beginning, I think that whole idea of escaping a brick of weed was something amazing, you know. So, shout out to that. So, what are some of the cultivars? Because I mean, really, I saw a lot of the trends coming out of the Bay in LA, and I know that the Bay Area stuff was coming from the mountains in the north and stuff like that. And so, what cultivars are you seeing from your region that you think are going to be pushing trends like in Emerald Cup and in that event?
Well, I think they're already there. I mean, our Redwood Roots, I've manifested this shit, worked really fucking hard. And again, I'm not tooting my own horn, but the family of brands, Redwood Roots, has been blessed to work with the Ridgeline Farms of back-to-back first place award winner at the Emerald Cup with his Green Lantern and then his Runts. And he crossed those two to make Lance and got first place with that. We got 3 first place winners from one farm, 3 top 10s in 1 year from Ridgeline. You know what I mean? So that Lance and the Green Lantern are special, and he's continuing to evolve that Lance by crossing it with some other farms, genetics and whatnot. Then we got Whitethorn Rose Concentrate getting first place in 3 categories last year, all with and we need to remember this as a community of cannabis enthusiasts, that if you're a dab head and you're a concentrate person, awesome. But guess what? Guess where that fucking shit came from? It came from the flower. You can't have rosin without the fucking flower, y'all. And so remember the farmers. It's not that like manufacturers. I love it when a manufacturer gets first place and they say they get up. There was a guy at the Emerald Cup last year that got first place. And the only thing he said, he got up there and got the mic and didn't say anything about himself. He said, I just got good flower from a farmer and didn't fuck it up. I got lucky.
Word.
Dropped the mic.
Word.
Drop the fucking mic.
I think I saw that.
And so, but so the Whitethorn Rose, and then last year as well, the double OG Chem that Dan Pomerantz from Rebel Grown up in Harris, right here, 45 minutes east, right at the corner of where Humboldt, Trinity, and Mendocino come together, literally at the crossroads of the Emerald Triangle counties is where Dan's farm is. But he's been rolling the double OG Chem for a while, but gets first place in sun-grown flower last year with double OG Chem. And so last year, Redwood Roots, first place Lance, first place double OG Chem, 3 first place in the concentrate categories with Whitethorn Rose. And so I think those farms and their genetics have already proven themselves in the marketplace and are continuing to prove themselves in the marketplace. And really, what's really exciting to me is, and that people should also understand, and not to take away from the Johnnies and the Jasons and the Dans of the Emerald Triangle, but is that there are a lot of what I call surfing. There's world-class surfers up here that could win every fucking contest in the fucking planet. They don't want to know. They want nobody to know who they are. You will never see them in a contest. And I call those people soul surfers. There's a lot of farmers in the Emerald Triangle that are soul farmers. They don't want accolades.
Right.
They don't want awards. They don't want to stand on the stage. And their Ridgeline and Huckleberry and Rebel are great examples of what you can find up here. But just know, everybody, that they're the very just minuscule piece of what's really going on up here in the hills and valleys of the Emerald Triangle. And I think the more we can continue to get exposure, and thank God there's people like Johnny and Jason and Dan that are willing to go stand on the stage and promote this place as a community. Yeah. But that shit is just gaining momentum naturally and organically, one day at a time. It's like pow, pow, pow. We now have retailers reaching out to us. Like,
That's
Hey,
great.
we
That's
didn't never
great.
use that. You know, retailers don't really call people.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah, yeah.
fantastic.
Retailers
man.
sit at their place and just get fed and really like don't even want to hear from new brands.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I got enough brand, like get away. Don't ever call me again. I got plenty of brands. Like don't, but we actually have people calling us, which is
Yeah.
pretty rare. And so I think the more Jason and Johnny and Dan and those types of folks and Ted from Canna Country can like lead and be the tip of the spear and show other farmers that what they do is special and who they are is special. And the way they steward their land is special. You know, a lot of these farms up here are stewards of the land. They're actually enriching the earth. They're enriching the dirt. They're not depleting it. They're not taking from it. They're improving their land. They're creating, you know, fire breaks around their houses and their property. They're thinning the forest consciously for fire suppression. They're spending their winters in their forest thinning the trees out for fire suppression. You know what I mean? Like they're stewarding the land. So there's just, I think that the more people understand that these farmers are chiefs of volunteer fire departments, they're soccer coaches, they're land stewards, they're presidents and executive directors of community centers. They're real people. You know what I mean? Just trying to do what they love and trying to live where they love to live. That's starting to come out, and people are starting to like that. And I'm not answering any of your questions.
I love that.
Chris.
I love that. I love that Johnny has that tourism license, man. I just have fantasies of being able to get down there and being able to sit in a hot tub, a hot spring, or some kind of hot shit and just look at his farm. You know, I just, you know what I mean? That sounds to me. That just sounds like paradise. You know.
Well,
I agree. Yeah, go ahead, Sam.
I was gonna say, Chris, we're gonna have to wrap it up soon because we're out of time. But I wanted to. Oops, you just lost your video there. But one of the things I wanted to just say is I hope we should schedule another follow-up with you. Maybe we can link up at the Emerald Cup because JR, we're planning to bring JR down to the Emerald Cup in Oakland, and maybe we could connect with you there and ask you a couple more questions, or at least later in the year, because there's even more questions that I wanted to ask you about that we didn't get to today. But these are really interesting, like you said, rabbit holes that you took us down, but they were all super interesting and super fascinating. So I really appreciate your time. You took a fair amount of time on your Sunday afternoon with us today, and I just want to say we really do appreciate that.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity, Sam. And next time I'll try to follow your lead a little bit more.
No, like we wanted to talk about all these sorts of things. You know, the Emerald Cup, like I said, the Emerald Cup is really special to us. That's actually where JR and I met, and then came up with the cannabis came out of that. And then I discovered Whitethorn Rose at the Emerald Cup in 2019 and became one of those super fans like you were talking about, and kept talking about it on Cannabis all the time. So it's a special place for us. So we're super excited about it coming to Oakland this year, and we're definitely gonna I'm assuming you'll be there. Can you share a little bit about your plans for the Emerald Cup?
Stay in the course. We're doing the same thing we've done since 2016. Every year we bring a family of farms with us, and they represent their own flower behind their own little station in our booth. So you'll be able to see Jason from Ridgeline, Huckleberry, Johnny, Jesse from Sticky Fields, Dan from Rebel Grown, Ted from Canna Country, Eric and Jill from Hogwash Farms, and so forth. It'll be our little family of brands. Farm Cuts joining us this year. We distribute Farm Cut as well, which is a grouping of 5 farms that created kind of a co-op brand. They're not an official co-op, but they started a co-op brand called Farm Cut. We distribute them, so they'll be joining us in our booth this year. We will doing our own point of sale. We have a delivery license, so we'll be able to sell direct to consumer right out of our booth. You won't have to go anywhere to sell product. And know that there's quite a few entries coming in, both concentrate, pre-roll, and flower categories from this community as a large. I'm not exactly sure coming out of our booth. I'm sure
they all probably entered something, but I don't know 100% what they entered or if they entered, but just knowing them, I'm sure they have. But we'll be there live and direct and full force.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm super excited about it. Like I said, we're stoked on the new venue. I think it'll be really interesting to see it interact more with like East Bay weed culture, and because you had to kind of if you were coming from the Bay Area, it's a little bit of a trek up to Santa Rosa, especially if you're coming from an SF or East Bay or whatever it is. So I'm excited for this new Emerald Cup to be a little bit more accessible to the folks in the Bay Area, and I'm just kind of curious how that's gonna play out. So I'm really excited, and then also the fact that you guys have that delivery license that you can sell directly in the booth, that's gonna be clutch. So I'm gonna be definitely swooping up some Whitethorn Rose and anything else that Johnny's got there.
Last year was the first we went really small with our supply last year, because every year we usually bring a lot of product home and I always overdo it. So I undershot because I wanted to sell out and kind of have that vibe. We sold out day one. And so I ended up sending a van back up to Bembo to load back up for day 2 last year. So it was kind of a cool thing. Like Johnny and Jay's like, "Whoa, we sold out? Like, we better go get more." I'm like, "Dude, I can't not get, we sold out. We sold out." And then like talked me into it. And we ended up coming close to selling out day 2 from a re-up in supply. So anyways, it was just a fun cool experience.
If I could interject some advice, it would be take advantage of that drop culture that's going on right now and get those guys breeding, man. Get those guys breeding, because they have their brands. Ridgeline is a brand.
Yep.
You know, Huckleberry, you know, they're a brand. And so those guys need to get to breeding and start selecting and start putting out shit that they, you know, that works for them in their region and all that.
They
Fantastic.
are. A lot of those guys are. So because we've with Johnny, we've talked about Tangled Roots, and Tangled Roots has been selling seeds from a lot of these guys now too. I'm growing Paradise Pine from which is one of those Whitethorn Rose crosses. But once again, we've got to wrap up. Thank you so much for your time today, Chris. Really do appreciate it. If you're watching this show, please follow Chris on Redwood Roots. Google Redwood Roots, and you can find him. Also, if you're on LinkedIn and doing that whole thing, follow him on there too. He's super, like I said, super interesting, thoughtful conversations that you have on there. You're not, like you said, just be like, "Oh, the fucking regulations suck." You're more like, how do we get through this? You know, so I really appreciate that conversation. And shout out to everyone who supports the show, all the supporters and sponsors down below. We really do appreciate your support. We've got more episodes on the way, so like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. And as always,
growers love.